Back with Wilkins. Absolutely magnificent from Ray Wilkins. Well with the header, but it's Durant again. The last chance perhaps for Rangers. Attaches on for goal. John makes it 2-apiece. Johnston, and he scored.
Against Cantona, nicely left there by Haitley, and here's the break on. It's Ian Durant through to Haitley. McCoy on the far side. Gary Speed is racing back to provide the cover. Here's Ali McCoy. Oh, he's done it! Ali McCoy from Rangers.
Here's Gascoigne now. Can he produce some magic? Still it's Gascoigne. Oh yes! A tremendous goal by Gascoigne. It's been very evenly balanced. Here's Gascoigne now, pushing forward, showing great determination. Oh, he's done it again!
There's a slip by O'Neill. And Laudrup to win. Rangers look for a goal and get one! In the 8th minute from Brian Laudrup. And Celtic's wall is 5 strong. But Alberts gets it through! The hammer has torn Celtic apart.
It's Barry Ferguson! Oh yes! The captain shows the way! Here now is Neil McCann. Is there going to be a twist in the tail? Lovenkrands! Yes, there is! Peter Lovenkrands! It had to be him! He has surely won the Scottish Cup!
Like this, here's Davis, put in by Darshville. Davis! Darshville! They've nicked it! Away from home! Manchester, brace yourself. Rangers are coming!
Bit of stoppage time. Kevin Thompson's corner. It's Bagheera! Borat stops it. Boyd! Edu has put it in! Morris Edu! Right at the end!
There's no doubt Vice has made an impact since he has come onto the park. Jelavic is in behind. It's Jelavic for Rangers! It's scored!
Jelavic on to Davis, and Lafferty's in already! He scored! Inside the first minute! Luco, definitely a threat. Still going! That is just brilliant! A goal for Luco! A goal for the fans! A goal for the cause! Here's McCoy. Barry McCoy! Looking to make it happen here. He might just do that. Right, Jack! Deflected off Brown and in!
And Gulaci was missing, and there's Lundstrom! John Lundstrom with the goal! But here's Joe Aribo, a slip from Tutan. Aribo! A bolt from the blue! Joe Aribo!
Hi there, and welcome to everybody watching the live Wednesday Bulletin. I am joined by Adam Robertson today. How are you doing, Adam?
Yeah, good, thanks, man. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It feels like it's been a while since I've been on a pod with you.
I know it has. Since I stepped down from hosting duties, I don't see everyone as often, so it's nice to be back on.
I know, definitely when you left the bar for the hosting was lowered, my man. But there we go. And of course, we've got a bronze medalist, Shug, returning. Shug was away over in Vancouver, Canada, for the 2023 World Wheelchair Curling and came back with a bronze for Scotland.
No, I'm magnificently proud of having another bronze medal. I still haven't got a gold, but no, it genuinely was good. But unfortunately, I managed to pick up COVID, and I'm
Oh.
I like to say I'm nearly back on my feet, but that would be a miracle that not even getting over COVID would happen. But yeah, I'm starting to feel better now. I think I'm on the good side of it now.
That's good. And I'm just going to bring up a wee comment from AG here. Hate the international break. You'll be pleased to know that's the only mention that Scotland will be getting on this podcast, I think, for the whole time. So no bother. Look, obviously, I think we all know it's a bit of a quiet news week with Rangers being the international break. So we're going to try maybe have a look at some few wee things today. Obviously, we've got On This Day. I'll come to that in a wee second. I want to talk about Ali McCoy's comments in the media about closing the gap with Celtic, see with the guys if they agree with them on that one. It's, I know, putting out that people might not agree with Alan McCoy, that just feels wrong saying it. Maybe have a wee look at what success looks like for Rangers, maybe this season, next season. I've already had quite a lot of interesting comments with that. I'm going to try and split it up into 4 sort of bits. We'll maybe look at trophies, maybe the players, the youth setup, and and the off the field stuff in terms of the boardroom. And if we've got time to it, we'll maybe come on to the Cantwell sort of media narrative. And I want to maybe talk about Zach Lovelace, and Nico Raskin is the other one we'll maybe come to at the end as well. But as always, like to start with a wee On This Day. I'll come to you first one on this, Adam. And it's On This Day in 2010. 9-man Rangers won the League Cup in a 1-0 win over St Mirren at Hampden. We got Kenny Miller scored that goal, and a late goal after Kevin Thompson and Danny Wilson were both sent off. That was Rangers' 26th League Cup, and we went on to win our 53rd league title that year as well. Just want to give a shout out to WTP 72 RFC on Twitter for that, because that's where I got all these stats. Adam, what was your memories of that game in that day?
Yeah, just ridiculous result and game all round, really. I mean, I think even a 10-man Rangers, most people would probably still think had it in them to dominate a team and probably win the game. But at 9 men, you're thinking probably, I don't know, your heart sort of sinks. And then it's just made more ridiculous by the fact that they weren't even up 1-0 when they went down to 9 men. I mean, it would still be I'm not saying it would be easy to hold on to a lead with 9 men, but I think to sort of somehow be able to pick yourselves up and still be able to score is just testament to the mentality of the team at the time. I mean, I can't think there's many other finals across world football, really, certainly not to my mind, where that's happened. So, yeah, it's funny as well, just looking at the lineups. Looking at the St Mirren lineup, Jack Ross is playing wing back. It feels weird. It's over a decade ago now, and he's now a manager. So, yeah, good memories, but also just, heaven forbid everything just goes simple for once.
Yeah, that's it. It's the most Rangers of cup wins. And Shug, John Weir's put the Pigeon Cup final. I totally forgot about that. But yeah, that was just like the epitome of a Walter Smith team at that. I remember Wilson getting sent off, and then his boy, as Walter's called him, Kevin Thompson getting sent off as well. And I was just like, oh, I don't know. And then I just had that thing in me. I didn't think we were going to lose that final, and obviously Kenny Miller stepped up with that late goal. What was your memories of that day in that team in that game?
Yeah, I was most definitely a pessimist. So we went down to 9. I was like, I can't see us winning this, but I guess it was more afterwards. I think there's been more than one player's come out and said that was, like you say, the epitome of Walter Smith. That we also used to see him in the director's box and maybe coming out of the dugout and stuff like that a couple of times, but he was literally on the touchline the whole game,
yes.
The whole of the 9-man bit, and he was directing everybody, telling everybody where to be the whole time, and he just didn't stop that whole second half. He was just constantly on the go, and it was his cup final. It was his man management of the players, and the fact that them players would have run through brick walls for him. I just don't know of any other manager in what history would have got that from the players. It just epitomises the fact that he is, in my mind, the greatest manager we've ever had. and that cup final that's what I remember most about it, is just his man management and the way he sees the game. And I think if we'd been down to 8 men nowadays, I think Walter would still get a win off them. So that's how confident I'd be with Walter.
I know that's it. It's do you know, I can't think of any other game apart from Ufa that Rangers have won that they've had nine men in the pitch. It's literally the only other game that comes to mind. And I'm going to bring up a wee comment from Robertson here. He said we have another Wilson that needs sending off. Oh boy, have we got some stuff to talk about that for later on. But look, I'll come to you, Adam, on this. Obviously, we had Rangers legend Ali McCoy has been doing the rounds in the media. I think it was actually for the international break coming up, but as per, he's been talking about Rangers. Just a wee quote here, just to read off. He's talking about Michael Beale, and this is going to be so difficult to do without having to trying an impression of Ali McCoy. But he says, I think he's done well. I really do. I definitely think the gap is closed. He's only dropped 2 points. That's excellent, absolutely excellent. There's a train of thought that Celtic just slightly have the advantage at this moment, but I don't think the gap is what it once was. The League Cup final, there wasn't a lot in it. Celtic probably just the better team. The game at Ibrox 2-2 at New Year, Celtic started well, but Rangers probably should have won. He'll know himself, Michael. He's just got to tweak it a little bit. He'll obviously look to strengthen without giving up this year, which I don't think for a minute he will do or has done. He'll know that he'll need to make changes in the summer. Now, it's difficult to disagree with, I think, a lot of what he said there. But I mean, what do you make of what McCoy is sort of? Do you think that Beale has closed the gap?
Can I just say sorry that your Ali McCoy's impression is no Grado?
Listen, after I'll do it for you after, Shug. All right. I'm from East Kilbride.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to kind of unpack there, and I know we'll have a slightly longer discussion about this. So,
yeah,
and I think close the gap seems to be one of these terms that over the past couple of years in football is thrown around quite a lot across many leagues. But, you know, if you're asking the question, has Michael Beale come in and done a good job, then I think the answer is yes. Unfortunately for him, the one game that he has got wrong was that League Cup final, which was obviously by far, you know, his biggest game as Rangers manager so far. So it'll be far easier to judge in 3 or 4 months' time, because if you're a pessimist, you would say, well, if Celtic win that Scottish Cup semi-final, then it's incredibly likely that they'll win a treble, whereas last year they didn't, and Rangers reached a Europa League final and obviously won the Scottish Cup. So I think he's not, you know, in terms of closing the gap, our Rangers, you know, I'm more confident of Rangers playing Celtic than I was towards the end of Giovanni van Bronckhorst's reign. Of course I am, but admittedly the bar by the time Gio left, as much as I like him, as you know, like the guy and the person, you know, the bar was kind of on the floor in that sense. Celtic were pretty dominant in most of his league old firms. So yeah, I think I agree with the general sentiment of what Ali McCoy is saying. Michael Beale has come in and done a good job, but I think it's going to be a far easier statement to sort of unpack in a few months' time.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Shug, we've got Ian Mitchell here, said not officially closed any gaps, but we now have confidence in the team, which we didn't under Gio, which says a lot. I think that's a very, very fair comment. It's Beale came in with a 9-point gap. It's still there. We haven't really made headway on it. Do you agree with not in a literal sense, but do you agree with Ali McCoy in terms of Rangers closing the gap?
I always agree with Ali McCoy. Everything Ali McCoy says, I'm in total agreement with. I think we couldn't possibly. The only game we could have possibly closed the gap in that 9 points. So it's the Old Firm we drew 2-2 that we should have won. Because other than that, they've won every single game, and so have we. But I mean, when was the last time we were on a run like this, where we were winning and confident of winning, going into every game? I think Michael Beale's certainly earned. I know I want to stop them winning the treble and everything, but whatever happens in April in the cup semi-final, I think he's certainly earned the opportunity to show that he can close the gap and overtake them next season. Like I say, it wasn't his fault that we're 9 points behind, but it is still going to take a lot of work, and we've got good players. We've got the making a good defence with Davis and Golds and them things. Something that was denied to Gio. You never got the two of them fit at the same time. I think that's made a huge difference. We need a new goalkeeper. And then the midfield's looking exciting. Cantwell looked really good at the weekend. And Raskin, if we can keep a hold of Tillman, I think that's a really exciting midfield going forward. So, yeah, but a couple of positions need strengthening, and I don't think Celtic aren't all I'm up to be. I'll never ever believe that. Europe shows it, and the fact that the teams that get pumped by just get pumped in Europe, Leipzig and Shakhtar. So they'll make out that their Champions League group was tough when it really wasn't. So I don't believe they are the be-all, end-all that they think they are. So I think they're there to be overtaken. I think it is a case of keep being dominant and keep winning games against the Diddy teams in the league, and then beating them in Old Firms, and you win a league.
That's it. It almost sounds simple there, Shug, doesn't it? We've got a comment here from Robert Robertson. I'm just going to bring it up. It says, Ali is everything that Walker, Sutton, Hartson and Craig are not, unbiased and unprofessional. And I think that's a really excellent point. That's why we love him, and he's one of our own, and he's one of the best, I think, best Scottish media pundit at the moment. Look, Adam, I just want to sort of stick in and around here, just pick apart a wee couple of interesting points from what Ali said. When he says here, he'll know himself. Michael has just got to tweak it a little bit. First of all, I'm a big fan of the Michael. I don't know if I like people calling the Rangers manager McBeal, even though I guarantee at some point in this podcast, I'll end up straight into him and calling him that. But where do you envisage those wee tweaks that he's talking about that he has to make?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting one, and I think obviously McCoy is probably looking sort of longer term there, because in terms of tweaks, it's, I don't think, I love Alan McGregor, and he is, in my lifetime, far and away the best goalkeeper I've ever seen wear a Rangers shirt. I don't personally remember Andy Gorham before anyone jumps onto that debate again. So I think, we don't have a goalkeeper that's going to win us the league, personally, in my opinion, and every team needs that. And then I think if you look at some of the other positions, obviously, it's kind of well documented in that League Cup final. I think he got the midfield wrong. So I think moving forward, does that mean we need to kind of think of a better and more consistent midfield? And then obviously up front, he's got decisions to make. We've seen Cholak come in, more regularly these past few weeks. It's looking more and more likely that Morelos and Kent are going to head. I mean, I've said on the podcast before that I think that Goldson announcement that we all remember so fondly was an exception rather than the rule. I think that's rare across, football in general, not just Rangers, to see a player sign a contract that late. So unless we see something in the next couple of weeks from Kent and Morelos, I would be incredibly surprised. So I think it's just over the summer, he's just got those kind of little decisions to make that turn, a consistent, decent Rangers side over this last 6 months into a title-winning one. And I appreciate what Shug's saying, the sentiments that Celtic probably aren't, no team realistically is not catchable. If you have the right players and you get things right, then that's the attitude you have to have. But ultimately, right now, they do have players that are going to win them a title, and Rangers don't. And as any Rangers fan will say, that sadly isn't where they want to be. So I think those are the kind of tweaks that he has to make. I think the mentality, to be fair to him, has come back. I think we've seen that pretty quickly. I mean, the first game, even that Hibs game under Gio, would have been screaming for a 2-1 loss. The Aberdeen game would never have. I mean, I don't know if the Aberdeen game will ever happen again, to be honest. It was that rare a kind of event, the 3-2 up at Pataudry. So I think the mentality is certainly heading in the right direction, and it's just, just got to kind of make those tweaks across the sort of spine of the team. And I think, hopefully, as long as injuries can stay, not as bad as they've been, then should be able to make more of a push for the title.
Yeah, no, it's again, totally agree with you there. It's a fair point. I think there is a wee couple of tweaks that we need to make. Shug, I'll come to you here. Teddy Bears says, the difference is we wanted Oh, sorry, wrong comment. I've actually brought up there. It's we can't rely on other teams taking points from them. We need to stick to winning runs and do everything to not get beat from that mob. Something that Ali picked up in there, he said he's only dropped 2 points. That's excellent, absolutely excellent. I think it's 18 games. I think it's our longest away running winning streak that we've had. I think it's about 8 or 9 games as well there. I mean, he has certainly come in and he's improved the team under Gio. It was lethargic, it was boring, it was I hate saying it, the horseshoe and the side to side. But I mean, okay, maybe at times the exciting football isn't there, but we are winning, we are scoring, and it was one of my biggest bugbears that we weren't doing the business away from home, but we seem to have really turned that around.
Yeah, that's always going to be the key in Scotland, is beating the cannon fodder, and Gio wasn't managing it, and that's where the big difference is, because in theory we lost the first Old Firm of the season to them, so that's 3 points, but the other 6 points have appeared from somewhere, and it's dropping points against rubbish teams. I would say with Scottish football, I think the gap is getting bigger between Rangers and the rest, and well, Celtic as well.
Definitely.
So I think we're going to, because I mean, this season both teams could finish on 100 points, over 100 points. It's crazy when they used to win leagues with 80 points and things like that. And so I think that gap is getting bigger. So it's writing off the comment that we can't rely on other teams to take points off them. We've literally got to go, and we've got to win 34 games in a season, and then we've got to take more points off them than they do off us in the other 4 games. So in the way that we're going to win the league. So it's terrible to think just how bad the standards got. But when you're seeing, I guess it's a reality check, because our teams get gubbed in Europe every season. So I guess it's no shock that the standards dropping.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there. The league has been really poor. Just going to bring up this comment because it made me laugh. GVB from Curry Muncher said the same feeling of passion that you get if your granny uses her tongue to give you a kiss. That's a fucking, but there we go. And Adam, the last wee point in this before we move on, because I think this is interesting. Callum C here says sometimes it does look like Gio's team playing need to sort that out. What do you think about that? I mean, it's just, I mean, he's had one, well, not even a transfer window. What do you think about that comment? Basically, that it is Gio's team basically still, even though most of the players were injured under Gio.
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately he has inherited a team that was managed by Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, and so I think, you see that with any manager, particularly ones that take over halfway through a season. And I think it's odd sometimes looking at teams. It's interesting to compare. For example, if a team is on the brink of relegation, a manager comes in, sort of gets them organised, and that's kind of the basics of what we associate it with. Obviously, Rangers are at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where the manager comes in halfway through, he's there long term, he has to think of and he's probably coming in because things aren't going well, which thinks a whole new style of play and the mentality needs to change. So yeah, I do agree that there are times that it does look like Van Bronckhorst's team, and there's probably going to be times the remainder of the season that is going to be the case. So we have to just sort of grin and bear that for now, I would suggest, because any manager is going to need time, and I suppose we'll come on to this. The important thing is that they don't, and listen, let's not, obviously things weren't good enough domestically. I'm not going to forget that these are the same group of players that under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst were a penalty kick away from probably the biggest achievement, certainly in my lifetime, arguably in the club's history. So, that there are certainly elements of that team that are, were clearly good. So, yeah, there's parts of it that's frustrating. There's times when they're not scoring goals, or times when they're not perhaps consistently playing the way they are for 90 minutes. The Kilmarnock game a few weeks ago springs to mind, where you're 3-0 at half time and you're thinking, try and make this 5-6, close the goal difference.
Yeah.
But, in general, I think that is just going to be the case, and I wouldn't use that to criticise Michael Beale, because he is going to need just time to change that and put his own stamp on things.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting. I think there's about 10 games we could pick out in the last few that we said we should have scored more goals to close the gap on the goal difference there. But I don't think that's happening anytime soon, despite the use of the word relentless and ruthless all the time. Look, Shug, let's get into the sort of meat of the podcast here and the sort of the banner and the title, and it's what does success look like for Rangers? And I've kind of left it a bit open. I'll be keen to get everybody in the comments thoughts on it. I'm not, maybe looking from now towards the end of the season, and maybe a wee bit looking into next season as well. My plan is to sort of split it up into 4 bits. I want to talk about trophies. I want to talk about the players, maybe the youth setup. A few opinions on that I've heard. And obviously the off-field stuff, which I know everybody has an opinion on, and having spoken to a couple of people about the off-field stuff in the last few days, I may have not a change of mind, but may have looking at it in a slightly different perspective now. So, I mean, I'll come to you, Shug, here. What do you think about success for Rangers? I mean, I hate saying it until it's absolutely mathematically done, but I think even since Beale came in, the league was possibly out of reach. To think that it was unfortunate in that Old Firm game for the 1-1 draw. It was gutting to lose such a late goal, but the Scottish Cup's it's silly even saying it, but it's an absolute must, isn't it?
Yeah, if we're talking about success, then winning the Scottish Cup and closing the gap on them between now and the end of the season, I think that would be a success. Get the monkey off our back with in Old Firm games. It seems to get passed back and forward just now. We went so long without beating them, and then we went so long without losing to them, and now it seems to win back again. So yeah, I think we need to start beating them, close that gap. I can't see us winning the league, even if we win the 2 Old Firms. I don't even see them dropping 3 points in any other games. So, well, it need to be 4, I think, because of the goal difference. But yeah, closing the gap and winning the Scottish Cup, I think, would be a success for Beale. I think if he'd offered that at the start, he might have taken it.
Yeah, I agree there. There's a few comments coming in here about it. Ian Mitchell says Scottish Cup and keep the league gap in single figures. Rangers loyalist is the same. The Scottish Cup is a must and close the gap. Teddy Bears here, it said, and keen to get your thoughts on this, Adam. It said it can't be regarded as a success by winning a cup. Come on now, I get that. I'm trying to look at it in, not the season as a whole. I know this is difficult as a Rangers supporter trying to be semi-optimistic about things, but if you're breaking it down and looking what Beale's got to work with, I mean, I'm assuming you're largely agreeing with it, but it's really interesting. It doesn't really mean anything, but is getting the goal difference down important in this instance, something we've just talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and not to sort of rephrase your question, Kel, because it is a good question, but you're right. You have to look at it as what is success for Rangers from the point that Michael Beale came in, because he can't do anything about what's come before him. And we're in a position where, as Shug was talking about, Rangers could feasibly have won all 3 Old Firms. And unless, mathematically, I think if Celtic had just kept winning with the goal difference, and it looks like they are going to keep winning, they might still have not won the league. He was literally at a point where, because of the consistency against the other teams, the league was almost completely out of reach in that sense. So I think for Beale, the only thing that he could do, the maximum he could have got was a cup double. Sadly, that isn't going to happen. Or it's obviously not going to happen. League Cup's done now. Yeah. So, the next trophy is the Scottish Cup. So I think if he wins that, then you have to consider it a successful season within the context of the manager leaving. If you ask me, next year, Michael Beale's been here a full season, he's had the full year, and we're still this far behind, say the League Cup's not been lost, and we're again sitting here saying, can we sort of salvage a Scottish Cup and go again? And that's a completely different conversation. And I think, as you say, I don't want to sort of rephrase the question because it does make sense, but when I think about what is success for Rangers in this sort of current time period over the next few months, then it is that Scottish Cup. And yes, closing the gap would be good, and getting the goal difference down would also be good. You never know. Sometimes things can happen. If Celtic wrap up the league, or and then maybe points are dropped elsewhere, that can happen. So I think the main priority is the Scottish Cup. Get another trophy in the bag, and just start fresh again in the summer. Really, that's the way I'm thinking about it, and then we can have a conversation about what long-term success looks like, because that is perhaps slightly different.
Yeah, again, AG with a really good comment here. He said it wouldn't be a successful season for the club, but it would be a successful season for Beale, which I think is a very, very fair point. I think given especially how, I mean, I keep forgetting how early into his actual managerial tenureship that he is, and if to get a cup out and 1 out of 2 cup finals would I think would be a decent return. I wouldn't say it was successful for Rangers, but I would be happy for Beale, and it would just be nice to get our hands on a trophy and maybe actually go to a final or a game at Hampden this year as well. Look, Shug, looking at it, and this is the one that I think may take a wee while to discuss in terms of looking at the players that have been a success or looking forward. Who do you think has been successful so far? I mean, I'm trying to look at some of the players that even Gio brought in, forgetting, guys like Ridvan now we've seen. I mean, okay, it's only been 60 minutes of him. Guys like Lawrence that I think people are forgetting about, seeing Suter in a bit more. I know we've had this discussion about the back three, and obviously since then Raskin and Cantwell have come in. Would you see these guys as a success? Is there people that you don't see as a success?
Matondo. Something that's not been a success. Matondo's there, but who was the last right winger Rangers signed that was a success? No, I think we've got the makings a good squad. I'm not sure how to say it, but Kent Morelos, and especially Morelos, I've had so much love for over the years, but it's almost like we need to sort of get rid of players and start afresh. I know that won't be cheap, but I mean, it's RFC 72, I think it was, stole my thunder earlier when we were talking about it's still Gio's team. It's still Gerrard's team.
Yeah.
There's so many players that have just been there for so long, and so many of them have not been successful. I would never consider a Rangers player's career to be a success with 1 league and 1 Scottish Cup. So there's a lot of that maybe needs looked at. A lot of fringe players that probably need driven out the door, and allow some of possibly these youth players that we've got coming through that are quite exciting to try and open up that route for them, because I don't want to see Scott Wright coming off the bench. I want to see one of our young players coming off the bench. I know that hurts you, Kyle, but I don't want to see Scott Wright coming off the bench. I'd rather look towards the future, and I guess that's... I've choked Kyle. But yeah, season, I think that getting some of our young players in and amongst the games, we need to get Ridvan into some sort of form, get him some game time and stuff like that. Borner's maybe another one that I don't think he's in a bad season, but he's maybe one that has to move on. But yeah, Ross Wilson's got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, you can say that again. Yeah, I think you've obviously been watching the pods away back in Canada. I was fearing the worst when I was on a podcast talking about Ridvan coming back in, and basically trying to say that I'm in total agreement with you if we're looking forward to this sort of player trading model type thing. Barisic is a guy that we have to consider selling next year with. I think he's got coming up to the last sort of 14 months of his contract. We've got to be cashing in on him. Yeah, there's a few comments coming here. Aldo McNaught says it'll be good to retain something for a change. I said there's a few comments here about Matondo, which I'll maybe come on to. I'll give you an easy one here, Adam. AG says Matondo's a baller. I think he's actually joking about this, but I'm only going to bring this up because I have heard a couple of people saying that when he's fit, that people are willing to give him a chance in a Beale team. And the sort of comparison for that has been Sakala in terms of his pace and his goal contributions. I mean, is there any hope about Matondo, or are we just going to end this conversation stone dead right there, Adam?
I mean, honest opinion from what I've seen of Rabbi Matondo, I don't think he's anywhere near good enough for what's required for Rangers. And I would echo everything that Shug said. We'd rather have, we'd rather sort of let Matondo. I'd almost rather lose him for less money, because that is likely. If we're going to sell him this summer, that's what's going to happen. I'd be amazed if they recuperate the fee. But the sort of gain rather than money in that sense would be more opportunities for a youngster to come off the bench, rather than someone who, no harm to the guy, but unless there's a vast improvement, which would be a miracle, there's no long-term benefit to Rangers. There's not a financial benefit. There doesn't seem like there's going to be any benefits on the pitch either. So what's the point in just sort of having him around if he's not only a squad player but an ineffective squad player? Shug mentioned Scott Wright, and I do agree, but at least in his time at Rangers, Scott Wright has provided some decent moments. I mean, he scored the winning goal in the Scottish Cup final, or sort of sealed the Scottish Cup final. So I think that, I can't see any way back for Rabbi Matondo, and as I say, no harm to the guy, but it doesn't seem like it's going very well for him, and I can't see any way back. And if that's going to be at the expense of a young player, then there's a lot wrong with that for me.
Yeah, Bilko here says 28k a week, allegedly. I know we've all seen that sort of what do we call it, the big spreadsheet that had all the wages and stuff like that on it, and if that's true, it is absolutely shocking. But he must be sitting rubbing his hands. But yeah, I'm in total agreement with you there. As I just thought I brought it up because I saw it in the comments, and for what it's worth, I don't know if Matondo's future is at Rangers, and I think that we will maybe come on to successes in terms of off the field stuff later on, but that's certainly not been one of them. Shug, the next sort of wee aspect to maybe look at this, and again, it was really interesting to see what people's comments on it. You touched on it a wee bit there, but it's the youth setup, especially for this season so far. The sort of three players were Devine, King, Lowry. I think we were all expecting him to make a bit of headway into the team so far this year. We know King featured quite a lot, maybe left out to dry a wee bit in the Champions League with the injury crisis that we had at centre back. But do you think, what have you made of this so far? Were you expecting these guys to feature a bit more or anything like that?
I think Michael Beale said something a couple of weeks ago about Leon King, and he's probably played the amount of minutes they're probably talking about for him for the season, but played it in that short period of time when we were lumbered with all the injuries. I'm not sure exactly how many, but he must have about 20 games under his belt this season, which is probably what you'd expect an 18-year-old. Devine, I don't remember being big talk. He seemed to get flung in and did a job when we were missing our fullbacks. And the fact that Tav's still playing every single minute, even when he's not been in form, he's still playing every single minute. I don't know how much that looks towards Devine actually being a backup, and I've seen this link with a right back from America the last day. Somebody else did win, the new Matt Polster. Came in, sit for a year or two and do nothing except have a gorgeous wife. But so I'm not sure about Devine, and Lowry's obviously, his season's been a disappointment from the alleged falling out in the summer and then getting injured and then getting injured again. I'm sure his season's not went the way the club himself or the fans had expected, so it's been a bit disappointing in that front. So, I mean, I guess in the next few weeks, I'd like to see players that Michael Beale think are going to be part of the squad next season, like Leon King, getting some minutes, getting some time. John Suter has to come on and get some time as well. I'm aware of that. I think we stopped running Goldson and Tavernier into the ground. I think we did that for too long, and that'll only last for so long. So I think it's important when we get a couple of goals up on teams, which we're doing now, sometimes, that we do bring on players that maybe don't expect to get too many minutes and rest for better players, because that could be part of the reason why Tav's form seems to dip so much, is because he's just constantly playing, never sits out, never gets a rest. I'd like to see Tavernier now that he's went over that 30-year-old, that he doesn't need to take a break. He doesn't need to sit out games. He doesn't need to start games against Motherwell or Ross County and things like that. Adam Devine's shown already this season that he's more than capable of playing against Dartmans.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Sorry, Kyle, I was just going to add very quickly there. Like, if you look back to that season that Stephen Davis won Player of the Year under Gerrard, we've seen there the benefits of. I'm fairly certain, if I remember rightly, Davis was taken in and out of the team. Now, I'm not saying that Tavernier at his peak is, Tavernier versus Davis are different positions, etc. But the principle of the impact that could have on Tavernier, who's just, I struggle to criticise the guy, to be honest, the sheer amount that he plays. I'm not saying he's immune from criticism, but he just dragged Rangers through it so many times. So I think it's not just, I think people maybe hear that and they think, well, you think Tavernier should come out of the squad? Yes, but for his sake, because I think it'll have a better impact on his form longer term, and we have seen that in the past with players when they get taken in and out.
Yeah, no, total agreement with you there. As I said, Darren Knock here says Devine should have been given more game time, and it's really hard to disagree with that. I was actually just laughing at Shug there because he said that Tav shouldn't be playing against teams like Motherwell, but he did score a free kick and put the assist in for us at the weekend.
100% acknowledge that, but we shouldn't be needing Tav to be scoring free kicks and assisting for us in them sort of games. We should be more than good enough to go to relegation teams and hammer them.
Yeah, no, listen, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I think you've made a really, really excellent point. I mean, I totally understand, where Goldton's coming from with his off the field issues, with his heart and all that stuff, and obviously he wasn't playing for a couple of years. I get that you want to play every game. I also get that Tav as the captain of the club, people, he's the standard bearer, and he brings. That we could have that eternal argument about what type of captain is Shug. I know I was in a pod with JB at the weekend there, and he said you're not going to get the butcher headband with the blood coming all down it, and the Richard Gough shouting at people and going absolutely through people and stuff like that. But I think there is a time where the management have to step in and say, look, I know it's admirable that you guys want to play, but it's not about them. It's about the squad as a whole. Guys like Devine have to be filling in there, because I've been very, very pleasantly surprised by Devine, especially in that wee stint that he had it. He looked brilliant at left back, if I'm being honest, and it's not even his position. Something here that I was going to say as well, Adam, was a comment. I've actually lost it now, but it was saying that. Maybe just looking ahead, what do you think about Tav playing a bit further forward with Devine playing in behind him? Do you think that's something that we could maybe see Rangers doing next season at least, or well, it's not going to happen this season?
My honest opinion would be no, just because I don't think the solution to further up on the right hand side is pushing Tavernier up there. I understand where the comment is coming from, but he's not a winger, so I don't really see what use it would be pushing him up. I think the best way forward for Tavernier is, and it doesn't need to get taken out for 2, 3, 4 games unless he's injured or his form really merits it. One game every now and then. I think you see it often. It's extraordinary the impact that can make. I mean, you can see it. You see it in teams all the time. It just takes one 90-minute breather, and then it can have a huge impact on them just to come back so fresh. Especially, say Rangers are, going to a team that's 11th, 12th in the league, and at the weekend they've got an Old Firm or they've got Hearts away, Hibs away, whoever it might be. To have him rest for that game and then come back in for a game against stronger opposition, I think would be a real benefit. But to return to the original question, no, I don't think we'll see him pushed up high.
Yeah, that's a much better answer to that question than the one that I just asked there. That makes much more sense there, Adam. Look, and the final thing about the youth players, Shug, I'll come on to you here. Teddy Bear says, what's happening with Malorie? He obviously has potential, but if his attitude is as bad as it's been reported, then getting him out on loan. I mean, we've all been there. We've all been at Ibrox. We've all seen him on the TV and stuff like that. He has looked a real player. Mentioned that I know the I think it's the under 17s or under 18s. Have got a game coming up on the 2nd of April against it's an Old Firm game at Ibrox. Malorie scored an absolute screamer of a goal in that game. Where is Alex Lowry this season? And if his attitude is as bad as what it has been reported, do you agree with that comment and shift him out on loan?
I think he's injured again. I seem to remember something. He picked up something because I don't think he's playing for the B team or anything just now. So he must be injured if he's not in the B team. We could discuss this in the pod chat because there's an element that believe that loaning players out is not the thing to do. But I believe that loaning Alex Lowry out would be the right thing to do. I also believe loaning Leon King out would be the right thing to do as long as it's at the right standard, the right level. I don't see any point in loaning players to League 2 and League 1 and things like that. Going and playing in formations that they're never going to play at Rangers and grounds they're never going to play. But I think Alex Lowry, Leon King, they're more than good enough to get loans in the SPFL or even the Championship in England. I think they're both good enough to get that. But maybe Alex Lowry needs to see the other side of the game, the not so glamorous stuff, the not turning up at Ibrox, not playing in front of 50,000 fans every other week and stuff like that, and see where his future could lie if he doesn't knuckle down and get his head in the game, because it was something that he'll regret all his days, I'm sure, if he doesn't. But it's all speculation. For all we know, maybe Gio was a bit asked towards Lowry and it's still the way around, but you start to worry when it's two managers in a row that are saying similar things and dishing out similar treatment.
Well, that's that exactly, isn't it? It's AG here says in regards to Alec Lowry, he said there's too many players in that position now. He's nowhere near the level of Tillman, Cantwell or Lawrence, and it's a shame to say it, but I think he is right, and I think if you've got all three of those guys firing and fit, I think you struggle to see where Lowry fits in that team. Look, I'll come to you, Adam, on the last sort of section of this. What do we define as success for Rangers looking forward and for the rest of the season? And it is the light topic of all the off-field stuff here. Obviously, there's been many pods on the protests and what we all think of those. And you know, I'll say it again, I support those guys' right to protest, regardless of what the board think. And you know, they shouldn't be choosing what goes in and out the club as long as it doesn't cross a certain line. As I said, we're paying fans, we're paying customers at the end of the day, I suppose, if that's the way the board are looking at it. And if we want to be heard at a game, you've got to let us hear it at the game. But where do you sit in this whole Wilson and Robertson stuff as well? Do you think how would you deem them to be successful? And I'm really interested to see all the comments we'll get in from this one as well.
Yeah, I imagine there's going to be a lot of comments on this. I mean, I would firstly like to just echo everything that you said there, Kyle, that the fans have every right to voice their opinion and make their voice heard at games, just as everyone that perhaps disagrees with those sentiments that were expressed on the banners has their right to make their thoughts heard on it. That's the right of every individual fan. I think, you know, you talk about the success, and I always think that at board level, and we see this across, so to give you a sort of strange example right now, over the past year, I've heard a lot less criticism of Man United's board, for example. Now, I know they're going through a sale, and you can't compare clubs like that, but the minute Ten Hag came in, they started playing a bit better, they started winning trophies, your focus becomes on the football team, and I think that distracts. Now, obviously, yes, Ross Wilson has a huge influence on what that football team looks like. Mm-hmm. So if you're asking me what I would like to see happen, I think we may as well get through this summer and give Michael Beale one full season, and see where we are. And, you know, should we, as I said earlier about a separate talk about, if we're having similar conversations this time next year, then yeah, the decision might be, I don't really know, you know, he might make the decision himself at that point and realise it's not the way forward. But there's been a lot of change at the club, and you kind of said it earlier, a January transfer window, you know, it's very different from the summer. It's quite hectic. You're not getting the same time for a player to come in, settle, etc., etc. That's not to say that players in a January window can't have a huge impact in either a positive or a negative way, but there is a huge difference in the windows. So, yeah, at the end of the day, this summer is huge. This time next year, if Rangers have won the first trophy of the season and they're still in a fight for the title, then we're probably not going to be talking about Ross Wilson as much, which ultimately is what we want. We want to be talking about the players on the pitch and the success that we want to see them having. So that is ultimately how they will always and should be judged. And I think that if you look at that January window just gone, compared to the January window last year, which, I mean, I can't go back down that rabbit hole, to be quite frank, because that was just a disaster. You look at it this year, they've signed Raskin. They've also got, I remember being on the podcast, Raskin was a huge one for me because there was a lot of, that because we could have got him on a pre-contract, couldn't we? But there was this kind of thing that, there was other teams about. They've clearly thought, no, that's the player we want. Let's just get him, because the long-term benefit of perhaps paying a bit more, figures will get thrown around, etc. But the long-term benefit of just paying more and getting him in is the main thing. So, and Cantwell's obviously looking sharp as well. So, there's been a vast improvement from 1 January to the next. If they get a Scottish Cup and we're optimistic going into the summer, give them the summer, go on next season, and then go from there. That would be my suggestion. But that is not to say, as we said earlier, that these fans aren't making valid points at the games.
Yeah, no, again, very hard to disagree with anything you've said there, Adam, which is unusual for me being on a podcast with This Is Ibrox. But Shug, I mean, I'll ask you the exact same question about that. I mean, where do you stand in terms of Robertson and Wilson? I mean, do you think that they have been a failure? Do you think that, are you looking to give them a bit more time? Or, I mean, where do you sit on it? Because I know you've not been on in a while. You've been stuck over in Canada. So I'm sure you've got plenty to say about it, Shug.
Yeah, well, I was a Ross Wilson fan initially, but realistically, we've had one good transfer window in January, and we're trying to paint over things when realistically, if we were to put out our best team tomorrow, how many of them players aren't from back in Gerard's days and early Gerard days? The managerial appointments there down to Ross Wilson as well. So he was the one that was a big saying getting Gio in, and that obviously failed. I know Michael Beale came out and defended him and said there's a lot that we don't know the job that he does, but something the board and Stuart Robertson himself has said is best in class. Arguably, where are we best in class within the club? Because messages going out towards supporters and things like that, we're not very good at that. We're not being very clear about things. There's a lot of stuff. The Mygers thing seems to be, I know that's not Ross Wilson, although it might be Ross Wilson because we don't know exactly what job he does, but the Mygers thing's something that's not went down well. There was obviously harping back since Adam wants to remind us of last January's transfer window. I'll remind us about the friendly in Australia. I don't know where we are best in class. The medical department, Dr. Waller left. We never seem to replace him. Can't remember his name. Andy something, the chief scout, Scolded, wasn't it?
Yep.
He left. We never seem to replace him. Seems to be a lot of appointments missing from off the field. A lot of the stuff that did improve off the field when we got the kitchen and everything so that the players could eat at Ibrox, and we changed the changing room and stuff like that. That seemed to be a Gerrard-led thing rather than a Ross Wilson-led thing. So I don't know what Ross Wilson does. The scouting department seems poor. Yeah, we got Raskin from Belgium. Well, we identified Robbie Matondo playing on the left wing in Belgium and bought him as a right winger. But yeah, Belgium's a market we seem to keep going to. Cantwell's from lower league England, another market we keep going to. So I don't know. John Park was brought in. He was supposed to have all these contacts and things like that. But like I say, we're still shopping in the same markets, and they're not cheap markets. Being linked with players that have moved to I would say medium-sized clubs, and then you're expecting to pay £2, £3, £4 million for players. When if we'd have beat the medium-sized clubs to the players, we'd have got them for a few $100,000 and things like that. So I think there's a lot of work still to be done, and I think if the club want to defend Ross Wilson, they should maybe come out and tell us exactly what his job is and what he is responsible for. I'm not going to throw my football manager experience into what my director of football does, or sporting director, as he likes to be called. But if they want to defend him, they should maybe let us know exactly what he's doing and what he's done, because it appears to be very little.
Yeah, no, 100%. I said I was saying the exact same thing in Sunday's podcast about that. I think we just need to know what the bloody hell he actually does. Since then, no, I have had a think, and I've actually talked to a friend who's quite sensible in terms of when it comes to Rangers, and no, it's not Craig Dennett before anybody else asks or thinks that. There's a comment here that I'm going to bring up from Currymuncher. He says, there's been more fails than successes on Wilson's signing. My main bugbear with Wilson that he's front and centre when everything is going right, but goes into hiding when it goes wrong. And again, I could not agree with that anymore. We all remember the Aaron Ramsey and how pleased he looked with himself, and then there was nothing, contrition or anything at the end of the season. But the discussion that I was having is that, and Adam, I'll come to you on this and get your thoughts on it, is with, it's not as simple as looking at it. It's much more complex than just he's got the final say in terms of these guys. And I don't think anybody listening or watching into this is under the illusion that it is as simple as that. But you've got to look at it in terms of it's the director of football and the manager, and you've got to look at it in terms of Gerrard and Wilson. You've got to look at it in terms of Gio and Wilson, and now you've got to look at it as Beale and Wilson, and that. I think the Gerrard Wilson, there was some successes, some not so successes in there. I think we should be in agreement in saying that just Gio and Wilson just didn't work at all. But you look at it, we've had, a bit of a window, as we said. We've already discussed the difficulty of the January transfer compared to the summer transfer. And Rangers loyalists here said Cantwell and Raskin were two brilliant players that he's brought in very early days. But I would struggle to find anybody that would disagree, that would say that those two have not come in and made an improvement in our squad. Because for me, the midfield was the area that we needed to improve on. And it appears between Wilson and Beale that they've gone out and addressed it.
Yeah, I think the thing is as well for me, Carl, I'm a huge believer in, and always will be, that ultimately you do always have to look at yourself first, and that comes to players and managers. Yes, Wilson is accountable and should be, but there are players under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst who have gone through a significant improvement since Beale has come in. The style of play that Van Bronckhorst was putting in, and tactically, to be honest, there were times where I don't think that it would have mattered which 11 were on the pitch. If we were playing the way we were playing against some teams, we wouldn't have scored regardless, because the style of play just wasn't good enough. So I'm sort of somewhere in the middle with it, and I probably accused of sort of sitting on the fence in that sense. But I think the first two big signings that we've made so far have been a success. Yes, Cantwell and Raskin will of course be judged long term on how many trophies they pick up at Ibrox. But so far, they've looked to have made a positive impact. As you said, we've been crying out for the midfield to be addressed, and it has been. So it's a positive start, and you have to just look at it. I know it's difficult to separate what's happened before, and I say separate, not forget, because those things still happened last January, as we mentioned, all the things that Shug listed as well off the pitch. But I think a lot of people as well, I think they've seen this in the comments, is this summer, and I keep saying about this time next year, by this Christmas, we'll probably have a much better idea where we are with Ross Wilson and with the new manager. And when managers are constantly changing, it's a kind of hard thing, I think, to talk about, because you're constantly in your mind thinking, right, we need to start fresh. The manager needs time to get their players in, and then we'll go back and judge the board, etc. So I think if we get to our third manager and things still aren't working out, then yeah, we need to go back and look higher up at Ross Wilson as well as the manager and the players. So yeah, there's so much that must go on behind the scenes that we don't know about. There's so much. We don't even know what the guy does, really. We've been talking about that as well. So it's a very difficult thing to talk about, and we can only talk really about the thing that matters most to us, which is our Rangers winning football games and winning trophies. And that starts with the right recruitment. And if they get that right in the summer, and we have this conversation again Christmas time or so, then we'll have a much better idea of where we are with Ross Wilson, I think. It's a very difficult thing to sort of put into words, I think.
100%. I'm going to try and do that, but with Teddy Bear's comment here, because I think this is where I'm in the sort of same agreement with you there, Adam, in terms of this is Wilson's last chance in the summer. We will know by Xmas, probably before, if he got it right or not. I mean, I can't believe on Sunday I was all for, the whole board going, Wilson going, Robertson going, all that sort of stuff. But, taking a step back and having a look at it, calming down a wee bit, I maybe have thought it has been so far successful with those two coming in. Do you agree on this, Shug, in terms of that it has to be after the summer? Like, it's the summer, and if it's not a success by Christmas, he has to go?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's too late to change it now. The position that we're in just now, I think summer targets are already identified. We know that Beale said that he knows the striker he wants, and that he wouldn't be available until the summer. So we've already identified targets. So I imagine there's been a lot of work going on in that. But we've got to get more right than wrong this summer. We've got to hit the ground running next season, because if we drop points early again at the start of next season, we're going to be in the same position. So, yeah, I think it's a big summer for everybody. Like I say, and you said, I would just like, if Wilson wants to defend himself, let's put his job out there on what exactly he's doing, because from the outside, it looks like we've went backwards off the field. Certainly since Gerrard left, we've seen we went backwards. Medical, scouting, everything seems to went backwards. So, as well as players on the park, we've not replaced. We still get the same right back from before Gerrard. Goldson, McGregor still in goals. Morelos is still up front. Kent's still playing in the left. Still picking from Kamara in the middle with Jack. So the spine of the team's still the same. So we'll wait and see what happens. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting summer. I look forward to talking all about it.
That's it, exactly. I think, it wouldn't be Rangers if it wasn't, split down the middle. And RFC 72, again, it's a great point. I mean, I'll be honest, I go back and forward between this. This is Wednesday. The next time I'll be on will be next Wednesday. I might have a totally different opinion on the whole thing. And it said, "Yous are prepared to take the chance on him failing again and throwing away another season. Not for me. Change has to happen now." All I'm saying about that RFC 72 is that if you're taking it like that, I would say the Beale-Wilson partnership could be a success, and I will leave it at that. So I know we're past the hour mark, but there's just, and I don't like it, not the negativity, but I know it's such a good conversation to have around the club. But there's one last wee thing that sort of really, really caught my eye this week, and it was about Zach Lovelace, of all people. Adam, I'll come to you here. First of all, I thought it was massive that basically somebody within a Rangers youth setup was being called up to the international squad at English level. I think I was going to say it doesn't happen very often, couldn't happen. And then I remembered, I think it was Archie Stevens, who also plays for Rangers, was actually called up, I think, a couple of breaks ago. But, I mean, I was having a wee look at his stats and stuff like that. I mean, he's played 36 times in the sort of lone league. He's a couple of games in the Challenge Cup. Obviously made his League Cup debut this year. He's 36 games, 18 goals and 10 assists. I know there's been a lot of chat about Alfredo Morelos and stuff, leaving this season. But I mean, is the answer at Rangers' door already with Zach Lovelace?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not going to know until he gets a game consistently, I suppose, for Rangers. But just to kind of take it on the positive note, it's fantastic that he has been called up at that level. And over these past few years, England, particularly at youth level, I think recently have had tremendous success. We've seen some of the players they've brought through, and we know the standard that it takes to get in there. So he's clearly a very well thought of young striker, and he's got the world at his feet. Just hope that we don't sort of hype him up, because I remember wasn't so long ago we were talking about should Alex Lowry be in the team, and now we're having conversations about realistically is he actually going to last at Rangers. So I suppose there's an element of caution there, but just for the here and now, it's just fantastic to see, and all the best to him for his internationals. And yeah, you never know. Sometimes the answer is staring you in the face. There's a difference between not signing players and not signing them because you're putting your faith in homegrown, and by homegrown I mean literally Rangers talent.
Yeah, and Shug, look, I'll just end. I'll ask you a similar question. Are you of a similar opinion to Adam there in terms of it's a bit too early, or am I love youth football and I love nothing more than seeing guys from the Rangers youth come through. I mean, I don't know if that's just it's not my era, but like a lot of people's Rangers heroes. I mean, Ferguson in particular, he's the quintessential, came through the youth and captained the club. I would really like somebody to come through and have an impact like that. I mean, would you say that Zach Lovelace is a guy that Rangers could potentially be using next season to solve this if Alfredo does go?
Yeah, I mean, he's the management team are well aware of him. They've paid him in the League Cup and stuff, so he's had first team appearance, and I'm sure the squad, they know all about him. But I would temper my expectations too soon, because we did have a striker crisis and he wasn't getting on the bench during that. So I'm not sure how far away he is from first team football. Certainly first team football for Rangers, it's a big jump. I mean, Leon King was going to be the greatest thing ever, and he's struggled, and he's a couple of years older than, or a year older than what Sakas or Sakurai, as I've seen when he was listed in England 17 squad, Zakaria. So, I mean, it's a tough position being a striker and playing for Rangers as a striker, and sometimes as a lone striker role, it can be difficult. But he is definitely somebody we've got to, if England are playing him at under 17 level, then we've got to be looking at trying to get him involved. And certainly next season, like I said earlier on in the pod, without harping back too much, I'd rather see Zach Lovelace coming off the bench than Scott Wright. Sorry to hurt you again, Kyle, but yeah, I would far rather see a Zach Lovelace coming off the bench and getting 10 minutes at the end of a game to try and introduce. I think it gets the fans on side as well. The board and Ross Wilson want heat taken off them. Well, an easy way is to get young players in playing in a winning team. So maybe they should speak to Michael Beale and see if he can make that happen.
No, again, I think you've hit on another fantastic point there in terms of we need to be capitalising. We have not cashing in on guys when they've been at their peak, but I mean, you're no rubbish if you're getting called up for the under-17 squad at international level for England. So if other people are seeing it and about them, I mean, there must be, I don't doubt for a second that there'll be clubs sniffing about him, because he'll be 18 next year. I mean, you can certainly see maybe lower championship. Well, he was playing in the lower championship level for Millwall with England. I know he had a few games there, especially when he was 15. So, yeah, a guy that I think's got a very, very exciting future ahead of him, and hopefully that is at Rangers. But listen, just want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in today and watching. That was certainly an interesting discussion as always, but I just want to thank my guests. Adam, pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thanks very much, man.
Good to see you, and you as well, Shug.
Yeah, it's a joy being back.
That's it. And yeah, just to let everybody know, we are going to be taking a wee break over the international. They'll have the pleasure of me again on next Wednesday. But in the meantime, I know there's certainly 2023 World Wheelchair Curling Championship highlights that you can go and check out on YouTube for that, guys, because as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing else going on for the next week until Rangers are back at Ibrox on the 1st of April against Dundee United. But listen, thanks very much everyone for tuning in. Remember, like and subscribe in usual places, and pleasure talking to you all and interacting with you all in the comments again.